folks. It's Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue. And as I've been doing a lot of lately, I've been thinking about the bailout. And one thing I'm just really wondering about is whether we're ever going to get an actual knowledge of how bad it is. I mean, we're pretty far into this thing now. I mean, this has been going on for many months. When was the first real indications that something bad was up? I mean, last October, I think you could say, fairly reasonably that, something was up. Certainly by November, I think everybody was clued into the fact that something really, really big was going on in the financial services industry. All right. Excuse me. At that point, we're coughing up a lot of money. We're already coughing up, hundreds of billions of dollars. When are we going to get an honest assessment of how bad it is? Because, I think it's fairly clear that the banks are insolvent. They can't cover their assets. And yet, we keep pumping more money in there like, we're sure it's going to fix something when we actually have no real evaluation of how toxic the assets are. And as I've said before, I don't think we're going to get that kind of valuation from the current people who are in there right now. I just don't think they're going to tell us. They haven't been honest with us so far, and I don't think they're going to become honest with us suddenly. I think it's also interesting in that we talk about the banks and the financial services industry as if it's all one enormous entity and not as if it's several different components. The two most important being the distinction between commercial banks and investment banks. Now, I know that there isn't any technical distinction thanks to the eradication of Glass-Steagall, but we can still put that divider up whenever we want to. And we can say, this is this and this is that, and that we are guaranteeing this, and sorry, you people are all out in the cold if you invest in one of these investment banks, because that's part of the deal. That's why there's a difference between investment and banking. Investment has more risk than banking. Banking is actually a fairly simple transaction. And honestly, I would be totally in favor of eliminating all of these derivatives. I think they're theft by contract. And I think this is all kind of tied together in a weird sort of way, in the sense that I don't think we're getting an understanding, a real accounting of how toxic the assets are. Because if the American public is suddenly told how much they're on the hook for, and they don't keep getting it in these, $100 billion installments, which are, I guess, less painful for people to conceive of. If they're actually told that they're on the hook for, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, that's just it. Nobody knows. But, I think some of the most modest estimates that I've seen peg the figure at 10 trillion. So, I think if you come to the American public and you say, well, you're on the hook for 10 trillion, more or less, give or take 10 trillion, people are going to look at the whole system then and say, this is a scam, and we're not going to pay it. And, start looking to string up anybody who says that we should be paying it. And so that's why I don't think you're getting the honest assessment of how deep a shit we're even in. Because if they try to go for the whole bundle, for what they really have this set up to do, to suck all the money out of the economy because of these derivatives and all these various bizarre financial agreements that trigger off of certain groups of companies going under. Basically this thing is this whole network, this whole system, this whole financial, Ponzi crap is all designed to suck basically all of the money out of this country. Ella, in one of her more recent videos, pointed to something on Information Clearinghouse, which is basically a documentary about how Argentina went to shit, and I would just watch the whole thing, all hour and a half of it, and it's really interesting how many parallels there are between what went on in Argentina and what's going on here now. It's close enough that I think any reasonable person should be scared between that and the obvious parallels between what we're going through now and various other empires like ancient Rome, which I mean there are just piles and piles and piles of very, very specific, actually, parallels between us and ancient Rome. Uh, you want a bunch of those detailed out for you, you could just look at Chalmers Johnson's most recent book, Nemesis. But those are my thoughts on the bailout and why we're not finding the bottom and why we absolutely do need to find the bottom. Because I think the only thing that's going to generate an appropriate amount of public outcry is actually finding out where the bottom is. And stress tests won't do it. The stress tests proposed by Geithner are the worst kind of trying to hide a problem while pretending to do something about it. You can't, it's not how they react to a specific situation, it's how toxic the overall assets are, and anything short of that is not going to let people know how they need to react to the situation. So if you don't have an appropriate level of reporting, if you don't have an appropriate level of disclosure, you're not going to have an appropriate level of outrage. And the bleeding of the American public will just continue, until we notice we have all these leeches on us and that they're sucking us dry. Anyway, that's Zach Elliott, and you can feel free to argue.